Hello and welcome to NewsClick. Today we have with us Professor Vijay Prashad from Trinity College, Connecticut. Vijay, good to have you with us.
Thanks a lot.
Today is President Obama's birthday and we can also do a midterm review of his presidency. When he came into power in the United States, at least the progressives in the US seemed to have high hopes that the progressive agenda would be taken forward by Obama. It did happen, at least a healthcare bill has been passed. But on all other issues, I don't think the progressives are happy with what President Obama is doing. Do you think it has made a difference to the progressive agenda his becoming the president?
I mean, one has to recognize that the United States for the last 70 years has been in the thrall of a right-wing government of one kind or the other. I mean, the United States has become such a country that if the Democratic Party were in any other country in the world, it would be considered a party of the far right. So the political landscape in America is dreary. You have two parties committed to corporate power, committed to imperial domination, and distinguished only in temperament, not really in program. You know, there is a small left wing inside the Democratic Party, but it's thoroughly marginalized. You know, it's a worse situation to be a left-wing Democrat, and it's unimaginable that I'm going to say this, than to be a left-wing person in the Labour Party in Britain, which is a pretty miserable place to be today. So that's the first thing to say, is that the political landscape is far to the right. Obama ran for office not so much on a program. He ran for office to put forward a feeling. He galvanized people of different backgrounds, thinking that finally the entire right-wing drift might be at least stopped, if not turned back. That was one of the promises, the kind of existential promise of Obama, was that he would at least halt the drift. After Bush, anybody was going to be better. John McCain could not have been the worst candidate for the Republican Party. In that sense, they gifted the election to Obama. But what was Obama's program? What did he run on? Very little that he ran on was actually progressive or even liberal. He ran on doing a more efficient imperial policy than the Bush years. You know, no ridiculous wars, Iraq, only good wars, Afghanistan. He didn't run on genuine healthcare reform. He ran on trying to preserve the insurance regime in the United States, to rationalize the insurance regime. Actually, Hillary Clinton ran to his left on healthcare. So he ran on insurance company reform, not on healthcare. On questions of financial irregularities, he, like many of the G7 leaders, was not interested in fundamental overhaul of the financial system. They went directly to what they started to call CEO pay excesses, which is a very small part of the problem, and maybe it's not even a part of the problem. Maybe it's just the tip of the iceberg. Problem is much deeper than that. He was not going to touch genuine tethering of financial instruments and other things like that. So very little of his program was actually moving the country leftward. It was a question of him existentially demonstrating a progressive feeling for the country.
Today, I say to you that the challenges we face are real. They are serious and they are many. They will not be met easily or in a short span of time. But know this, America, they will be met.
And certainly when he came to office, he brought that feeling in. People felt, now we are saved, he is there. But on paper, I mean, on paper, Richard Nixon was more liberal than Obama.
You know, to be fair to Obama and George Bush, as you said, George Bush appears to rest of the world to be an aberration. And you start thinking, maybe an intelligent imperialist president is better than a person who leads the most powerful country in the world but leads it stupidly. To that extent, I think, we still must make a distinction between the two, but not in terms of the content of his policies, perhaps. Coming back to the issue that you talked about, there are two aspects to it. One is the financial crisis, which of course is what he confronted with. Other is, of course, the issue of imperial domination of the world, which is the militarization which has been continuing, which still continues. The key test over there has been really Palestine and the occupation of Palestine by Israel. On that, Obama has really been absolutely no different from Bush. One can argue that some of the Bush initiatives were in fact a little better than what Obama has shown.
Obama has actually not openly moved an agenda in Palestine, which is a scandal.
It encompasses our national security interests, our strategic interests, but most importantly, the bond of two democracies who share a common set of values.
I mean, they have, the Obama administration has let the current Israeli government, which is unpopular globally, they have let them get away with murder. I mean, murders. After the Gaza flotilla incident, for instance, the United States refused to openly critique the Israeli administration.
One of the persons killed in the Mavi Marmara case was an American citizen.
Correct. He was a double citizen of Turkey and the United States, and the United States government had no formal complaint against his murder.
Coming to the financial crisis, I think this has been the one which has created the most backlash amongst the American public, that he seems to have gone along with not only the bailout but really the ripping off of the public and the government funds for bailing out the financial system, financial houses, and nothing seems to have been done to even discipline them even remotely.
Well, the American system is such that he is going to be able to move a very small agenda. I mean, the entire political economy of the United States is wound around the major investment banks. These banks dominate the political landscape. They dominate, in a sense, economic policy making. I met a man who works at the New York Federal Reserve Bank, and he said if there is any robust regulation of the financial system, all of us in the Fed are going to resign. Power vests in the investment banks. And the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, both of them are tied in a, bonded to the banks. Obviously, the population is outraged. I mean, home foreclosures continue. The unemployment rate is unbelievably high in some places. In some cities, it's over 30%, like Detroit. So parts of the country are in deep turmoil. From below came a assertion, popular assertion. Initially, small gatherings of people calling themselves the Tea Party, saying, we oppose the way our tax dollars are being spent, we oppose the deficit, this is insane, etc. They were quickly joined by a group of what I consider to be the absolute insane sections of the American right wing. A very astute Washington, D.C. Republican by the name of Dick Armey began to feel that there was this kind of uprising happening, and he has an NGO called Freedom Works. Dick Armey brought the best of corporate capital and threw it at the service of this nascent Tea Party movement and converted the Tea Party movement from a grassroots uprising of the right into a so-called AstroTurf, a kind of fake grassroots uprising. Using that momentum, they created, they had party conventions, and Sarah Palin was anointed the goddess of the Tea Party. So what you have now is popular discontent channeled through the most insane right-wing rhetoric.
What you're describing is the ideal situation for the rise of an even more fascistic right than what we have seen earlier in the right-wing, religious right kind of things. But do you think there is any possibility of Obama to really understand that this is where the things are slipping, and therefore to take a position by which bringing back, in some sense, at least a centrist left liberal agenda on the table?
I mean, if one was to advise Obama, that would be the only way to survive the midterm election in November and to have any hope of a chance of a second term. But you see, he is also captive of the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party in the United States is facing the same kind of ideological collapse as the Labour Party in Britain. How they are going to come out of it? Will the left inside these parties be able to regenerate themselves? That's a big question, Or, in other words, if it won't shift any further right, it may or may not, that's not clear. It will certainly shift to the temperament of the right, Whereas there was a slight shift to the temperament of liberalism, it will shift to the temperament of the right. But by and large, the policies that a Republican administration would follow are not going to differ markedly from the policies of the Obama administration where it counts. In some small ways, there are major differences. Obama is trying to pass more legislation for same-sex marriage. Obama is trying to push better protection for workers. In some meaningful but small ways, there are great differences. But where it counts, on the question of financial reform, on the question of genuine health care, on the question of war, the similarities are grotesque.
Thanks, Vijay. Hope to see you again.